Hi, I am Untitled and I'm here to give you a full view of the newest Triumph Tiger 1200 in the rally version with an Explorer trim, so the top spec bike. And I've ridden all the bikes in the big adventure category. I'm not paid by any manufacturer and I rent these bikes just like anyone can. If you are looking for a spreadsheet with some specification or someone to read the brand's press release, then this may not be the place. Here I review motorcycles based on my own experiences with all of them, and I don't really need to care if, for example, Triumph will like me after this review or not, but I'm currently in a shock and feel that I need to share with you some possibly better option for the specific purpose that the Tiger 1200 specifically rally is supposed to be serving. Sometime before making this video I had a Triumph Tiger 1200 GT Pro for a few days and I really liked it. Most things about it were brilliant. And now I've got a full perspective of the Tiger 1200 lineup. Here I am in a state of complete surprise about the rally version of the Triumph Tiger 1200 because of how different it feels to the GT. So it's the biggest Tiger with 1160 cubic centimeters of displacement of its 3-cylinder inline engine. Now the rally basically means that it's got taller suspension and a larger 21-inch front rim, while Explorer, on the other hand, means that it's got a larger 30-liter fuel tank and some equipment options that are unavailable for any other trim, like, for example, blind spot monitoring system. So the GT version is totally awesome, while here, the Rally, in the company of the Explorer trim, is like riding your grandma's wheelchair after attaching Triumph's engine to it, and also still with grandma sitting in it. It's a completely different world. To make things straight, I will lead you through how it feels and also indicate where the GT version felt differently, which will not be everywhere, but in many places, in fact, there are big differences, I think. So let's get the first thing out of the way, as it's mostly great and many of you will enjoy it, as I do in every Tiger 1200, and it's the engine. It's got 150 horsepower and 130 newton meters of torque, which is plenty. Not the most in the class, but it's giving you a lot of power down low, and it just gets better the higher you go, but without making you feel like you need to rev it to enjoy it. That's important to me, for example. I do like it this way. One extra thing to mention here is that indeed, the higher you rev it, the better it sounds also, which is pretty unusual. At idle and very low RPM, it really doesn't sound at all, to the point of making me not exactly feel very safe in traffic, but that can be fixed. However, on the other hand, with a pretty large and strong front LED lights and also auxiliary lights on the side that I had turned on, I think that it does a pretty good job at staying visible and safe in congested cities. Anyway, if you want to fully enjoy the experience, I would set aside some money for an aftermarket exhaust. That's my hint here. But that's on a side note, actually. The engine is really cool and it will handle those who like to push and get excited thanks to performance, and at the same time those who are calmer or simply very old and will appreciate it for torque down low, which makes overtaking calm, steady, easy, and still very much doable. Look how well it does from a medium speed in the 6th gear, and I wondered if I should do it, as I wasn't sure it would make it without reducing gears, but man, it went like a bloody freaking train. I'm really impressed. That's a very good engine, with one exception I'll tell you about and show you in a second. So yeah, if you are not certain when riding at any point, there's no need to worry, as there is Triumph's quick shifter also, which I think works very reliably, is easy to use despite it being rather slow. On the rally version it didn't bother me, but when I was enjoying as a whole the GT Pro, it was annoying to me due to taking a lot of time mechanically to engage the next gear. I even called it a slow shifter while something happened here, and it didn't bother me that much in the rally. And I don't know why, actually. And of course I'll tell you, but finishing the topic of this very nice engine, I mentioned that there is one exception to it being absolutely fantastic. That's because this one also played a nasty trick on me in a form of suddenly dying or switching off in traffic, forcing me at this time to stop and start it again. Now I was closer to being stationary, while on the GT, it switched off after pulling the clutch at a little bit higher speed. I didn't like it then, I don't like it now, and this makes me believe that there might be some maybe ignition issues, maybe some software things. What it is, I'll leave that to the mechanics, or rather software developers. This goes head to head with a lack of feel of throttle. I had to rev the bike unusually high to get going without worrying that it would stall. I was sort of lucky to start my tour with the Rally Explorer with its 30-liter tank, so 50% larger than other non-Explorer versions, full. So the bike was a bit heavier comparing to the GT. So if you are riding with a passenger, stay very focused during your first attempts to not stall it in traffic. So there you have it. Other than that, I am a big fan of this 3-cylinder beast. And here comes the other butt. So why didn't the slow shifter bother me that much here, while in the GT Pro it was bothering me? Ha! And I know why. And it's an overall feeling that you're getting when riding the Rally, and especially Explorer. It simply feels much more, maybe not much, but it feels more sloppy, more heavy, and not that encouraging as the GT. And seriously, comparing to the GT without the larger fuel tank, this is a lazy cow on wheels. This is where my surprise comes, and I've got to openly tell you guys that I really didn't feel as confident on this fully loaded Rally version as I was on the GT Pro. So here, this one is still stable in the corners and makes it easy for you to tighten at any turn and would stay in control. It's still all good at speed, but you actually start feeling that it seems not as agile, not as nimble as you might want it to. The GT is fine here. In tight traffic, I really wasn't too happy about this Rally version, regardless of what setting the suspension was in and whether the bike was in the road or sport riding mode. It just feels way too heavy, despite what the manufacturer tells you about the larger fuel tank being as low as possible and so on and so on. Bull crap! In the city, it lacks control, agility, and the happiness, in my case, that the lighter GT has. It doesn't mean it's bad or it won't give you happiness, it might, but comparing, So in the end, I just wanted to get out there and point it somewhere on the highway, get where I wanted to get, and take a breath. One special thing about the Rally is that it's taller, and in this specific case, it means that its seat is high from the ground too, it's higher. And I had it in the lower position at 87.5 centimeters. You see that gap between the seat and the fuel tank, right? It's because of that. You may rise the seat by 2 centimeters to 89.5 centimeters and feel that gap. The thing is that on the GT, I felt pretty much fine and in control when stationary, while here in the Rally, with the seat 2.5 centimeters higher, I didn't. I'm 183 centimeters tall. The first reason is the weight, that it's pretty high from the ground, and it's not that easy to control because of it. And the second thing is a difference between how the variants feel. The GT seat is very comfortable, one of the best in fact, and I believe that it's the same here in the Rally. It's just those 2.5 centimeters of additional height. So when it came to putting my foot or feet, both of them, down to support myself after stopping, it wasn't all that colorful. Again, I'm 1.83 centimeters tall, that's 6 feet, and so far I haven't sat on a bike that I would feel would be too tall for me. Here, I felt exactly that. It was a little bit above me. And it wasn't even the tallest position. I know what you're thinking. People are getting shorter as they age. Yeah, I know. But I measured myself and all the dimensions are still the same. Only, the biceps is growing and growing. The other factor here is that at that additional height, I realized that I noticed the seat edges suddenly in the front part of the seat. And I didn't notice any of that in the GT when it was automatically lower. So there was a bit of a sharp edge here in the Rally, kind of ripping through my legs when I was trying to put them down. This may happen, and it's nothing not normal. Same was happening on the KTM 1290 Super Adventure R, which is taller than the S. Yeah, my point here is that I advise you to take that into account because it makes suddenly a difference. If you sit on a GT and you're good, you're fine, it does not mean that you hop on a Rally and you feel just equally good and comfortable. Feeling great on a shorter bike may not mean that you will feel equally comfy once things get closer to the sky. So keep that in mind. I also, for the first time in my life, had trouble to put a bike on a center stand. It was getting dangerously close to falling, and my weight of my body, myself, seemed like not enough to fully dominate the weight of the bike and comfortably open or put it on the center stand. And I'm just waiting for the videos online showing people dropping their rally versions in front of everybody still. When on the bike, I was touching the ground with my both feet, but I wouldn't be able to place them flat. That's fine. Yet with a lot of weight, it might not make you feel that confident about yourself anymore. There are two things to say here. One about the performance and one about turning, so handling at the same time. Starting, of course, with the second one, I conclude that it's not as willing to turn at any speeds anymore, and I wouldn't write it as very, very good anymore like I did the GT. Here I'm 100% sure, and rally just doesn't give me the joy that I would expect from this kind of bike. And the first thing is constantly having that feeling of the rally version kind of resisting you a little bit, showing you who's the boss, feeling heavy, you know, and not that encouraging. So I want you to know that those purposes really are different, or you can use one happily in the city and not necessarily the other one. So I truly felt that its performance wasn't also as amazing as it is on the GT Pro version. It's the same engine, the same transmission, everything is the same, but mentally I am left feeling that it's a heavier, wider, and harder to steer thing than the GT. So even if the acceleration times would be super close, my brain tells me that Rally Explorer isn't as crazy in terms of performance, but the numbers probably would be the same, or very, very close. For me, that's a combination of height, weight, and it being less eager to turn. Okay, now if you are counting on it being at least a great touring bike, you should be right. I think you should be right. As long as you stay on the highways, I think it makes freaking a lot of sense. And I've made this introduction to mention the windshield that is adjustable manually now. So not like in the previous Tiger Explorer with the same exact name, in which you can do it actually electrically in the previous version, and that was great. But here you've got this lever that you pull up or down, and which may be hard to use sometimes and may require to use a scary amount of force to move it, but I haven't broken anything yet. If it's broken, it's not my fault, I didn't do that. You can move it to any position you want in the middle, and it changes the level of protection indeed. So yes, in the tallest position, your visor is indeed protected better, but your eyes exactly aren't. And you're wondering what I mean, and yes, very well, keep wondering, but even though English is not my native language, that's exactly what I meant, because if you fully lower the screen, you get a lot of wind hitting your helmet. That's easy, including your visor. But so far, this experiment has shown that you are not getting hit as much with road debris as you get when the windshield is up. Weird, yeah, but I'm serious. With this windshield and the overall shape of the fairing and everything else up there in the front, the wind blows not only from the front, but also from underneath you somehow from the sides of the bike. And it throws all kinds of nasty things inside your helmet through the neck hole if you have a very tight helmet with some padding here, you're probably safe. But my RI doesn't. There's like 1 centimeter of space between the helmet's front and my mouth there. And through that gap, on the bottom, all that shit from the road just flew straight into my eyes. And the same thing was happening on the non-Explorer, so I know that it's not the case of a fuel tank shape or a variant GT or Rally. And I lowered the screen and I didn't get hit with anything anymore, so for now I concluded that the windshield is responsible for it. And screw it, because this is one of the most annoying and uncomfortable things, or rather actions, done by a bike ever. And damn it, didn't they test it? I don't think it's my fault, as it would never happen on any other motorcycle, and here on 2 units of the Triumph Tiger 1200 it is doing it. So it means it's Triumph's fault, right? Not mine. Suspension is electrically adjustable, and it's a pretty cool thing to have, especially that the extreme differences between the sportiest and the softest settings here is huge. It's freaking awesome. To me, the sportiest is shaky, actually, to the point that I've got no idea where I could use it, while the most comfortable is fine if you're steadily riding straight on an uneven road. It really soaks things in a fantastic way and may just as well be the most comfy and softest out of all bikes. Not sure if Harley wouldn't actually be the only one to compete with it here. However, once you get off of the highway and start turning, braking and accelerating, it becomes a little bit too disconnected and a little bit more rubbery to me in this most comfortable, the softest setting. I like things as comfortable as possible, both in motorcycles and cars, but it's a little bit too much even to me, which says that, wow, this is something really. It's like, it shows how far they've gone. And I once used the term of soft like an old Rolls Royce, and here it applies too to the most soft setting. And to conclude, the best suspension setting to me in this bike is exactly normal. I would maybe sometimes switch 2 stripes down closer in the comfort area, and that would be fine too. If the bike would come without electric adjustment and always be in that normal suspension setting, I wouldn't miss the adjustment, I think, at all myself. Still, it's cool to have as an option that you guys may enjoy a different way of damping. I think this might be, along with the Harley, the 2 most competent suspensions out there that can either give you super shaky feeling, super stiff, or super comfy, super soft. It's really brilliant. Here you're having 10% more wheel travel in the front and in the back. It's 22 centimeters. Be careful visiting Triumph's website, as in the specification sheet they provide the wrong data for the Rally Explorer, claiming that it's got 20 centimeters instead of 22. In other places it states correctly 22. So it's taller than the GT, and we know it really is. I felt that. Ground clearance is unknown, but I believe that since the most realistic value for the regular GT version seems to be 20 centimeters, I would expect it to be between 21 and 22 in the Rally version. But with all that additional height and 10% larger wheel travel in front and the back, the nervous front brake seems even more nervous, and the bike dives even more than the GT when pulling the lever, the front lever, the brake. It's got a very rapid way of engaging and sending the nose of the bike straight down. I think it needs recalibrating perhaps, but it's not a big issue in my opinion. The braking power is really strong, and after you went through that initial stage, then braking is very solid and like easy to dose with ABS engaging actually pretty often. It may be because of the standard tires that are a little bit different than in the GT. Hell yeah, you are getting a thing called Metzeler Karoo Street, while the GT gets a well-known Metzeler 2 runs. And here with a 21-inch front rim, that's a pretty narrow wheel in the front at 90 millimeters. I felt it sliding a tiny bit, while the rear one was, I believe, not managing the bike's power well enough on tarmac. I think I haven't managed to do a full acceleration even once, as the traction control, even in the sport mode, was getting crazy at all kinds of speeds. And look, me, it's fair to take the bike the way it comes from the factories with the stock tires. It's manufacturer's choice and decision, and most of us deal with it. So here I am saying that these tires may have some disadvantages that may make the bike not have enough grip in the front and in the rear, especially when it comes to slightly more aggressive riding styles like mine, for example. Other than that, there is one aspect that you may be wondering about a lot, and that is whether it feels like a car after you sit on it. And the answer is no. The Explorer with a wider tank is not as obvious and in your face, and also doesn't intimidate you as much visually as BMW R1250 GS Adventure, for example, which feels like it's twice as wide, but then, well, once you start riding it, it feels more nimble than the Triumph. Just a little comment from me here, since I am super impressed by that specific part of a BMW. I don't think BMW's engine is as good as the Triumph's. You may quote me on that. So, if you are wondering about this part, I don't think you need to be exactly. If you put it next to a non-Explorer, you might not immediately realize what the difference is. I would say that design-wise it may not be any kind of drawback, as it simply is not looking fat, this Rally. It's looking, I think, totally fine. This should be a pretty fair assessment. Sitting position feels the same to me, and I haven't noticed this larger tank here getting in the way in any way. And the moment 50% of us have been waiting for, what about the unique to the Explorer variant blind spot monitoring system with the rear radar? I've been pretty upset about the lack of possibility of adding it to the GT, so any other, in fact, version, also any other trim than the Explorer, as I feel that since it is a fun but safety feature, every Tiger rider should have access to it. It's not a fancy addition like a fifth camera in a smartphone that you may need or not. If you don't have it, it's not influencing your life really that much, but it's a potentially useful thing on this motorcycle, a safety thing. So now I may drop those statements after having experienced the system in the Rally Explorer. So yes, I'm changing my mind in this particular case as compared to Ducati Multistrada V4's system. This blind spot monitoring system here is, sorry to say, but pathetic. I don't regret anymore that it's not available in any other variant, as simply fewer riders will get confused by it. It would be all fine if not for the lights that are barely visible. If you're riding in the dark all the time, that's fine. But in the broad daylight, it's more often annoying than really helping. It's basically always on when riding in the city. It's way too sensitive in my opinion, and if I were to take into account when it's warning me, I would ride from a city to a city without being able to change a lane. and give me those, 5 meters at least of space without blinking at me. Well, I don't know what the acceptable distance at what speed would be, but I would change a lane having what I would feel as being comfortable space while this thing would be there. I do check my mirrors, so I would notice that, oh, there might be a light on at the moment, but I'm actually not sure exactly. But if whoever would drift away and try to change a lane without checking their mirror and having some other vehicle next to them, so that's when this blind spots monitoring system should help and should save you, I would say that with those silly lights that are really, that's like nothing's going on, they would likely not get warned. And if it's gonna stay this way, I would at least like Triumph to add a, let's say, a flashing display or something on a display. I felt that in Ducati it was much more reasonable, and those lights were made in a way that you could really bloody see them. A lot of effort has been put into developing it, to install the additional parts, and in the end of the day, it's not remotely as good as in an older bike in the Ducati. It makes me ask a question. Has anybody at Triumph ever checked how they've done it at Ducati? It seems that no, so I would recommend the Triumph guys to go and see how Ducati made it. On the other hand, heat management of the bike is brilliant. The weather was pretty warm, there was some sun, and I got stuck in traffic quite a few times, and the hot engine did not generate any uncomfortable heat that would get to my legs or to my butt or even worse. Really great job here. The vibrations are there about 5,000 RPM, but it's not so terrible, as you rarely may ride at constant speed at 5,000 RPM and above. If you do, then you may want to take a deeper look at it. Maybe, I don't think that's a big issue here. I know people complain about it. I noticed it's there, but below that level it's fine, I think. And also, if you are accelerating, it's fine as well. And I love the drive shaft as it works just seamlessly. It works great, along with that additional rear fender installed close to the rear wheel. I'm all in for that. The transmission cooperates with it and the engine really well, and I consider it very precise, so all great here. I also really like the colors of this Rally Explorer. The white frame with the forest green color. Man, I think it looks great, and I immediately had a much more tough image of myself sitting on it and riding this bike in this color. It's still not the most pretty face, but I would say that it might do a better job in this color. That might be the reason to get this one. The thing is that there are only 2 more colors for both versions, black and white, which is not very impressive to say the least. There was one thing that I did not notice before, but I did now. Squeaking hoses that touch the display when turning the handlebar left. If you've ridden a Tiger 1200, please let me know if you've noticed that. About the display, it loads super freaking slowly, and only Africa Twin beats it in terms of how long you've got to wait. Shame, but on the other hand, the menu is very clear. It is very clean, it's intuitive and not too large, not too complicated. It's pretty good. I'm not sure about the placement and the idea of a joystick that looks and feels like an indicator switch, but well, I guess you don't maybe use it every time or even maybe every day, unless you do. The graphics are generally nice and crisp, with an exception of this. Somebody was really bad in Photoshop. They're also laggy and choppy like in an Android phone after 6 months of using, and this makes me laugh, really. Damn, that should be illegal nowadays. Just like heel hold that I couldn't get to work, I tried on a flat surface, pulling the front brake hard, then with the rear, then when I actually stopped at an angle and did the same, and it simply wouldn't work. When the simple was on, I was a little bit disappointed because it's a tall bike, so I could probably benefit from that. Other than that, there's keyless access that you can activate and deactivate if you know you'll be away for a while and don't want your bike to get that easily stolen. Very nice. It works in a way that after pressing a button on the remote, you can deactivate it. Then even if you approach the bike, it won't sense the remote and won't switch on. Same if anyone tries to clone your remote and it's disabled, they won't do it. There are both heated seats here, heated both grips, and a cornering front LED light, so the same stuff that you can find in a GT. And alright, to sum up, apparently in this particular case of a Triumph Tiger 1200, it really matters which version you go for. The Explorer trim affects how it rides only in the area of weight. The real difference, in my opinion, is when the Rally name comes into play with different suspension and wheel, and that's where the handling and control deteriorate. And overall, I'd say that this bike, with its awesome engine and neutral behavior at higher speeds, but not as good handling when it comes to lower speeds, it should still do a pretty good job during long trips on the highways, and if you are a very tall person that would actually appreciate the additional height. To me, it is not as alive and stimulating as a GT, so I really don't know who else might want to choose it unless they're super large humans. And it can also be those who simply want to go all in. But this approach, I'm not exactly sure will in this case be correct, as I see quite a bit of drawbacks. I wouldn't take it off-road for sure myself. Again, maybe I'm simply just too short. If you're below 180 centimeters or just below 5'11" feet tall, I really think that you should reconsider maybe and take one more look at the GT. And I wouldn't say it usually, but here I think it may matter a lot. One thing I like here much more in the Rally is that green and white color setup. I believe everything else you will get in a GT as well. If that made you curious about the GT, watch my video about the GT Pro. I've linked it in the description and you'll see how freaking excited I was when I was having that GT Pro in my garage. So in the end, the only justification for me to go with would be the Explorer part, if you go for the larger tank. Now, if you're not exactly all that crazy about the reasons for choosing the Rally/Explorer that I just mentioned, like the larger tank in the Explorer and being very tall in the Rally, then again, I don't see a bloody way to justify getting a Rally, and especially in the Explorer version over a GT, especially GT Pro. On my scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving this combination a 6, knowing that the GT exists. If there was no GT at all, that would be the only bike, I would probably give it a 7 because of a brilliant engine. It wasn't that easy to go through with this review, but I'm confident that once you get the vibe that the GT Pro gave me myself in my other video that I tried to transfer as well as possible, you'll get my perspective. So all the best, and I'll see you in the GT Pro video. Bye!